Andrew.
Hey, Julie, what's going on? What
The
is going on?
perfect day to have you on. I mean,
Yes,
you
indeed.
know,
And I saw your mug pre-show. This is my mug right here for
let me
those.
see.
It's
I hate when I wake up in the morning and Donald Trump is president.
those
That's hot.
will be running out soon. Based on this, no matter if he's going to be kicking and screaming out of this whole thing as he seems like he wants to do, because he's such a fool, as he always is.
Well, let me give you a quick introduction in case people have been living under a rock and don't know who you are. Andrew Jones, progressive political, sports, and music and culture journalist, commentator, and host. Your work has appeared at the Intercept, the Young Turks, the Guardian, ESPN's The Undefeated, Ebony Magazine, Raw Story, Huffington Post, MSNBC, and here at act.tv. You're a regular. I feel like it's been quite a while since we have talked. So I am very happy that today, the first show that we have had after President-elect Joe Biden was, officially given, that he won the election was announced this past weekend. You're the perfect guest to have coming on to talk about kind of what this means and where we go from here. Where were you, first of all, when you learned about Biden's win, and what was your first reaction?
Well, on Saturday, I was actually visiting my mom in our whole building, and we saw the whole news with projections of the networks. And then we also heard people outside yelling 2 minutes after. We saw NBC and also CNN make their projections. And my mom was already doing the hit the road Jack, Ray Charles, and doing her own version, hit the road dump. And literally we posted on IG and YouTube. So yes, it was a contrast somehow. Tuesday was going where, funny enough, I actually do this show on Tuesdays with some of my friends, and they happen to be way irrationally conservative. And, they were already doing that whole presumption about, because they weren't factoring in the mail-in ballots that many media sources, including, I think, as well as you, but also even those in centrist media as well, too, centrist corporate media, were highlighting how, because of Pennsylvania Republicans and even Michigan Republicans in terms of legislator not wanting to count the early mail-in voting before the final day voting, that we weren't going to have the full totals about these things, and that we weren't going to have predominantly a lot of the major cities, most of them Democratic, in fact, practically all of them outside of maybe Grand Rapids in Michigan, and even that, calling it a major city is a little bit of questionable with that, but that the results were going to be favorable for Biden-Harris ticket in the end in terms of the sheer raw numbers. So the celebration was going to be evident, particularly with it being a rare post-Halloween 70-degree day here in the 5 boroughs of New York, in the whole state of New York. So it made it to honestly be that perfect day for those to celebrate the this coffee mug probably being a little bit having its expiration date soon, as people went and did.
Andrew, what do you think this means for our country moving forward from here? And not just in the near term, but as we look over the next 4 years and possibly into the future. Your thoughts?
Well, it means that first, at the very least, that we won't be blowing ourselves up anytime soon, I would assume, in terms of things, because of how...
If we can make it to the 20th of January. If we make it to that.
That is a great point. That is a great point, Julie, because people have tried to, especially in corporate centered media, they try to say, oh, well, no honeymoon for Biden and Harris. And obviously us in progressive circles, knowing that Biden wasn't a lot of progressives' first choice in terms of the primary, that obviously we want to see things be impacted. We want to see a major impact and change on policy. But at the same time, first, not only is this nutcase party still controlling the Senate, this fool is still in office for at least 73 more days. And with how he is acting, literally on the golf course on Saturday, while having the unruly Giuliani do his thing as usual at the Four Seasons dump, trash dump, complaining.
Oh, yes. Let me put a photo up. If people haven't heard what the hell happened, could you please, while I get this photo, could you please tell people what happened there? This is hilarious.
Yes. Press conference that
Here we go.
Press conference of unruly Giuliani in this haphazard, clownish, ridiculous, foolish, nutty administration decided to have was not at the Four Seasons Hotel in Philadelphia. At the Four Seasons, what was this, like a storage place or
Yeah.
yeah, they
Next to the titty bar or whatever it was.
Yes.
Can you say titty bar?
Well, that is something that a lot of conservatives sometimes don't want to admit, but they do love going around to the places of certain enhancements of certain places. So
yeah.
They were stationed there because obviously all the lawyers, all the prominent conservative hack lawyers, they're not going to want to get themselves fully embroiled in this like they did 20 years ago, i.e. Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts. For people to remember, he was a lawyer in terms of helping the Shrub get elected over Gore, or selected over Gore. So they don't want to.
Although the Shrub did a nice thing. He did the right thing for the country. Did he not? Did the Shrub not do the right thing? He came out. He congratulated our president-elect. He was, to see Republicans like himself, Mitt Romney, that kind of, it suggests that there are still some sane Republicans, even if they're, we don't agree with any of their policy, that they're still committed to, a peaceful transition of power. Your thoughts about that?
Well, it's easy for them to say that when they are not in any positions of power. We literally still had the likes of Roy Blunt try to say, well, when all the votes are counted yesterday. And we're not even going to go into that direction of what Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham funding this fool's lawyer efforts just to be kind to him. And then Ted Cruz literally saying this election was stolen, fraud, and all of these wild.
When are we going to get rid of Ted Cruz? I mean, Texas almost went blue. It was this close to blue, and we still have Ted Cruz. It's an embarrassment.
Well, that just shows you with the Beto election from just literally 2 years ago of how it is really incumbent upon us to really evaluate our House of Lords, aka the Senate, because we had Ted Cruz saying wild and dangerous things and him not being held accountable for that for at least maybe the next 4 years. And that's the thing where we have to hope in terms of these special elections in Georgia, which was another wonderful benefit in terms of how Georgia has went from not being as nutty as a lot of other southern states to maybe getting a little less nutty and having these runoff elections in order for Mitch McConnell to not have any more control of a Senate where he just wants to be divisive, regardless of who's the Democratic president, regardless of how long of friends him and Joe Biden have been. He still is all about wanting to be for himself and his corporate donors. So that's why it's going to be so essential that we negate the likes of McTurtle, of Cruz being crazy, of Graham, because
Crazy Cruz. Yeah, Crazy Cruz. Let's start with the nicknames on our side.
We might as well, because it is evident, and people say, "Oh,
Graham Cracker." How come no one's done that in the last 40 years? I don't get it. I mean, he votes for anyway. Moving along.
It's because they'll try to label us as being uncivil when not only they do the name calling, but they justify it for horrible policies and doing horrible things and being hypocrites.
Andrew, the African American vote in Georgia was, a big part of the reason that Georgia maybe went to Biden. I don't even honestly know where we are with that. I think they're recounting, right? Even though it did go to Biden. Mm-hmm. And then Biden said in his acceptance speech that the African American community had his back and he will have theirs. What do you make of that promise, and how did it affect you when you heard him say that?
Well, that is something where he, has stated that in terms of trying to be consistent on it, because as we remember way back in the Stone Ages of February 2020, before COVID and everything,
before all this,
we had a major point, obviously, in the primary when Bernie Sanders won the first 3 states. Not only that, Joe Biden did horrendously in the first 3 states. They tried to make a second place finish in Nevada, seeing that it was an amazing revival. Well, he lost by 30 points after finishing behind Klobuchar and Buttigieg in the first 2 states. People
doesn't Biden know that we're just kind of voting against Trump. He's like, you're supporting me. I'm like, well,
I would hope. Well, I think still, even in the back of his mind, definitely, I would hope centrists have that perspective about that in terms of being humble about it. But it's more to me directed at like our media colleagues in these elite places that should understand that, as well as the celebrations, the felicitations that we were seeing on Saturday was also because we were glad that Republican reality TV show Nuttiness was thrown off, where we don't have to be subjected to Peter Navarro lying about numbers or trying to mislead about facts, or having still.
Yeah. I've literally never in my life heard a president say, African American community, I've got your back and we're going to deal with climate change. I was like, well, I'm listening to this speech after having watched Kamala Harris make her acceptance speech, which as a woman, I didn't realize how moving it was going to be to see that, to have that happen. It was incredibly powerful. And I'm hearing that reflected from all of my female friends across races, across the spectrum, of color. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts about the fact that he called out these progressive issues.
Well, it's just the reality of the situation, where you would just hope that centrists would be fully all the way factual, as all of us are in progressive media, about how, again, the Black woman vote central in the Democratic Party. You won't have to really worry about that in terms of them being like the steadfast lockstep voting bloc for the Democratic Party, as well as us talking of the realities of climate change. And even though we're enjoying this 70-degree weather here, the fact that we spent the last 4 years having a fool in a party, a major party still trying to deny and not wanting to take seriously those real concerns at the benefit of their oil-rich friends. So just the realities and how people have tried to be on Biden in regards to not minding frackings around, but then wants to have the focus on all these other things, and how that's a main topic of, you can't avoid that. And this is the thing where we were literally, in terms of the party, the major party that's about facts, you can't just hide from those facts. Those are the things that are just inevitable that you have to just say, particularly when you have a nutty side that doesn't want to say it and yet still has the ability to affect policy in a major way. And how I am fully all the way, for Nancy Pelosi more and more, because of the realities of dealing, particularly in COVID. If people didn't realize it, it matters significantly that Kentucky or Indiana or Mississippi are giving us senators that just don't want to do things except for their rich people and their interests.
Andrew, you were talking a moment ago about progressive media. We're talking, first of all, I was very heartened by the fact that there was no Bernie bros saying we're not voting for Hillary. Everyone was like, well, even if we don't like the guy, I think Trump is an existential threat. So the people who stood on their morals last time, perhaps, and said, I can't bring myself to vote for a Hillary Clinton, I feel like there were quite a bit fewer of those folks once they saw the existential threat that Donald Trump posed, not just to our democracy, but to, the whole world, especially when it comes to climate and the environment and, just selling off all of our natural resources to corporations, etc. Your thoughts on that front? Fact that the Bernie bros, which are mostly women, just to make that point, still came out and voted for Biden, even though he wouldn't have been their choice.
Well, Lady Berlana, this is one thing that I really emphasize in terms of not everything with 2016 in regards to 2020 is, first, we still have a crazy electoral college. I mean, this thing where people wouldn't have to be nervous as they were on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning fretting, where we were already would determine, well, Biden's going to get the most votes. So that's the thing, because, we have a lot of people still in 2016, it was more the people that were Bernie bros in New York and California, when we know those states also were going to go to Hillary, that were the factors with that. Now, the message gets, a little concerning when it comes to not urging those people in swing states, particularly those people in the suburbs who regularly do vote, but still will vote in terms of literally seeing what the last commercial showed them and what's in their whole gut about things. So I think that it's important that, whenever any message about that in terms of that whole notion of not wanting to vote for either the major parties or just feeling that both are going to be the same, that it is incumbent upon those who say that or whatnot, really say that from states where they know that the Democratic Party is going to be the winner with that. Because if you're saying it's a swing states, or you're not, most importantly, urging people, because unfortunately they also have their own vote too, but this is democracy. Why are 70 million people still voting Republican in this country?
Especially because of the right-wing media.
Yes, and exactly, and not only right-wing, but also a lot of false equivalents in centrist media. I mean, we still are literally having them try to say, well, the House lost a few seats, so does that mean that you guys have to go now to the center or to quote unquote moderate, and really trying to push that narrative? And that's why you saw Alison Springberger had that whole flare up, in terms of say that, and even Clyburn saying that too as well, where it's like, well, if you talk to people who normally vote Republican but love Social Security, love Medicare, and seemingly love a job that wants to pay them a fair wage, then maybe you should really tell them, since they are not rich, that, hey, why are you still voting against your economic and health interests? As well,
because they hate. They hate. They're voting on hate. It's a hate vote.
And that's going to be the key, I think, in terms of how we make sure, as I felt 20 years ago, even though I said that way younger as a preteen, that we don't go to having Republican administrations that are selfish parties, that they are, especially when there's one with a reality TV show who is doing the things that he's doing with his, whether children being adamant that it's stolen from their father, still repeatedly, that we do the opposite of those things. Don't we want to do the opposite of those things instead of be, again, mired in a situation when people said, oh, wait, well, we won't have another Bush elected. And all of a sudden we do worse or whatnot. And now we had this whole thing where thankfully, it fully appears, and it won't be the case, that he will get only 4 terms. 4 years. 4 terms. It felt like 4 terms. And that we can get a chance to, with the Senate elections in January in Georgia, to really give a platform and say, all right, we have the platform now where we don't have to listen to a nutcase deranged party.
I too was a bit disappointed when I was listening to what do they call it? National Petroleum Radio, NPR. It's called National Petroleum Radio now. Because the reporting on there, they were like, people are celebrating. Angela Merkel called and said congratulations. I don't know. They were reporting on sort of foreign foreign leaders calling to congratulate Joe Biden. And they said, yeah, but do the Democrats really have something to be happy about? And I'm like, are you out of your mind? What the hell kind of reporting is that they would be reporting it in that way? I mean, we almost won the Senate and we still have a chance. And even if we don't win the Senate, we have the presidency where people, who are these people going to be marching in lockstep with? The turtle?
Yeah, Julie. And the reason why they do it, because they honestly want to keep the Nutty party around, because they fear if it's just one party rational doing things.
Rational. Yeah. They fear rational. You're right.
A true middle and lower class, and a fear of people being unselfish in terms of having people represent them and not powerful like private sources. And it's again going back to that false equivalence thing and that refusal to say how Republicans are nutty. Like everything with the COVID bill right now.
I mean, why would they want to dampen the enthusiasm of, the Democratic Party, but not only just the Democratic Party? I mean, I don't have the numbers of how many Republicans actually voted for Joe Biden, but I would imagine that it's actually quite significant. I just, the fact that they wanted to dampen the enthusiasm and continue to fearmonger, the fearmongering is like disgusting. I listened to the Washington Post's daily thing that they put out. I think it was the Post, could have been the Times. One of those. I'm getting them confused. No, it was the Post. It was the Post. And they're like, we have this to report and this thing to report and this thing to report. But first, we're going to report on how the guy who gives the keys to Joe Biden, who's a Trump appointee, refuses to give the keys. And they want people who are actually living in the joy of reclaiming a love-based economy to go back to being fearful. I was like, Alexa, can you fast forward? And she said, sorry, I can't. So I said, okay, Alexa, cut it off because I don't want to hear any more fear mongering. I am done. And I encourage people to stick with news that is not just fear mongering. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and you said the two Amazon things right there in terms of Washington Post and Alexa. And by the way, my parents have an Alexa downstairs, my sister with Alexa and all these things. But that's the confusion that they want to do because they know that in terms of that media, in terms of trying to make both sides seeing the blame, like you had Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation, and I really wanted to see how these Sunday shows were going to try to false equivocate things. You had, again, Margaret Brennan, she was talking to Cedric Richmond, and she was literally saying both sides are to blame for COVID in terms of the polling numbers. And it's like, wait a minute here. This is what happens when you don't fully inform Americans and you try to do these things to try to make it seem both sides. We are literally having Mitch McTurtle and all of the nutcase party. They are holding up, not passing the Rational House bill, which is also funding their cities as well as not just here in New York or San Francisco in terms of Nancy Pelosi cities, but their cities over trying to protect the likes of Amazon and Apple or CVS or Walmart not getting sued by their employees if the employees get COVID on the job.
Right.
So that's the only reason why that bill is being held up in terms of that. And why it is something that led to a whole thing where when Amy McGrath lost to Mitch McConnell, this is why a lot of Kentucky, Democrats are saying, why is Chuck Schumer doing this and not picking Charles Booker? Well, even though they didn't know Charles Booker was going to emerge like he is, but they automatically went with Amy McGrath when McGrath just doesn't have the full ID basis as well as with the grassroots and progressive community at all that Booker obviously had, literally being in the state representatives in Kentucky. So it's these factors of how centrist media and sometimes certain centrists, they want to really try to make sure, at the behest of those really progressive wing of the Democratic Party, the rational wing, that we don't get these changes because they don't want their taxes going up significantly.
Not to encourage. I mean, I'm always going to encourage people to watch Act TV and follow Act TV across the properties that we do, of course, because I believe in the mission here. But one of the things that Act TV was doing was, based on what we knew was going to happen. Bernie Sanders said exactly what was going to happen in this election in terms of like the conservatives don't believe in COVID, so they're all going to vote in person. And the Democrats are like, we're going to stay home and use the paper ballot, and that Trump had a plan to undermine the election.
Yep.
Which included, I might want to point out, allowing people to die and allowing a pandemic to go unchecked, where I believe we're going to hit 10 million people infected with COVID-19 today. So he had this plan and he let it play out, and people who are not watching progressive media, my friends, I have friends in all these different areas. I have friends who are progressive and they watch corporate media because that's usually they're a little older and they're not necessarily former occupiers or whatever, you know what I mean? And they were just terrified this whole week. And I was like, I've been reporting, I guess they don't watch me. I've been reporting all week that we needed to stay calm and count the votes, encourage everyone to count the votes. Everything that happened was predicted. We knew this was going to happen. And that corporate media was, especially MSNBC. I was disgusted when I was watching MSNBC, but I was absolutely disgusted by the fact that, you could see that their corporate agenda was on tap. They They needed to keep eyeballs on their screens. They make a lot of money for Xeljanz when they're, the drug for, I guess, plaque psoriasis. When they're, you know what I'm saying? When they're keeping people with their eyeballs glued, they, instead of one night, they were glued for almost a week to these different platforms, CNN, MSNBC, etc. And they just fear-mongered.
Yeah.
They fear-mongered, and they kept people in that state of fear. And I just think it's repulsive.
Oh, it's really abhorrent. And, in the one show I give credit on MSNBC that has at least, and ironically enough, it had to be a Republican former congressman, in terms of this is that, and how they knew that they were kind of sort of responsible for propping up the reality TV show Nut, Our Disaster in Sweet, in terms of him occupying the presidency. Morning Joe, they really were talking about how they had said that it was going to be a few days time for this thing to be decided, where, they were skeptical of the Wisconsin poll of Biden being up by 17. Goodness, Washington Post, that one was a rough one from you. And really urging that it was going to be the mail-in ballots, and also mentioning how, as I mentioned earlier at the top of this whole entire great segment, how Pennsylvania state Republicans, despite Democrats controlling both, of course, the governorship, and the wonderful John Fetterman being the lieutenant governor and being as real as he is, and as well as Michigan, where Gretchen Whitmer has to deal with a lot of crazies in terms of the Republicans overall, as many crazy things that she's had to deal with of late, that it was going to be something where the mail-in and early ballots weren't going to be factored in terms of before the final day of voting. So it was something that should have really been, because I didn't see that enough on Central News Network, CNN, and you didn't see this even obviously through local media as well. So this is a thing that really allowed him to go up at 2 a.m. on Tuesday, going to Wednesday, Tuesday, being a fool, with them all smiling, thinking that they had won, and then like floating the message. And then I had to bust out laughing, Julie, because when I saw George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America, right, on Wednesday morning right after, literally used to say the president with his wild, outlandish false claim. This is something where even when Central media has to really say it directly, and they knew, because this is now the voting time, as they have said so many reports showing how much a disaster they all are at handling things, that they had to keep it real on that. But this is what happens when you have and you allow a nutty side to have equal coverage, and you really skip over the fact that Texas has these infected cases because you have a Republican nutcase in charge, leading to all these infections growing up more and more.
Andrew, I'm so glad that you could be with us today. Andrew Jones, you can follow him on Twitter at SluggaJells, SLUGGAHJELLS. Yeah, still on Twitter?
I hope to get it back. Hopefully, and this is with Twitter's nonsense in terms of things sometimes, I hope to get it back this week. Maybe an op-ed from the Times that I'm going to write. I got to see on that because of a lot of ridiculous details with that, but well,
there's always more to say, Andrew, but keep an eye for Andrew Jones. I really appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to us breaking down the pre-Biden rest of the 70 days here, however long we have, and then the Biden presidency. I did say, Andrew, that as a progressive, when I get to go back to kind of my progressive roots, my progressive coverage now, instead of being like, Biden's great, I can kind of say, okay, this is where we're at. I'm going to end all of my coverage in 2021 after January 20th is, even if this is bad, it's better than Trump. Imagine where we'd be if we had Trump, because I don't want people to forget that we almost had a fascist coup in this country. When they maybe aren't so happy that Joe Biden doesn't enact the entire Green New Deal as written.
Yes, I mean, it makes this month even more of something where I'm glad that I won't be able to have to use it anymore and it be a whole reality, because it should have never gotten to that point to begin
with. This is mine.
Yes, mug solidarity.
Mug solidarity. Hold on, let me make these bigger so the people can see. Yes, so mug solidarity.
Sure, y'all can screen grab this. You won't see this on any outlet on centrist corporate media. And that's the key. That's the key thing with that. Where yes, we can compartmentalize, and I, firmly say for sure that all the celebrations on Saturday, where I literally said we are celebrating us, not blowing ourselves up. We still have an electoral college that's kind of rational, a Senate that is still literally 6 people all the way, and a Supreme Court where we can't even watch the cases on TV, let alone the still problematic nature to me of lifetime appointments and how, it is still a democratic republic more than a democracy. But it's the thing where at least trying to have those conversations.
Oh, Andrew, you're frozen. Are you there?
Am I frozen?
I hate to end the segment on a frozen Andrew, but that was wonderful, and we look forward to having you back on the program. I'm Julianna Forlano. You're watching Act TV. If you are watching on Facebook, I want to say goodbye. I have to. You were frozen for a second, so finish your thought. But we got to go because I'm out of time.
It's Optimum. See, Optimum, don't do that with your corporate stuff, Optimum.
That's what I have too. They are suboptimum. They should just rename their company Suboptimum. Andrew Jones, thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to the next time you're coming on.
Always, Julie. Appreciate it.
It's great to celebrate the victory of the progressive, victory of humanity with Andrew. He is just a gem, and I'm glad he's part of this program. You're watching Act TV. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to please subscribe to us. I appreciate it so much. And tell your friends, because you're not, corporate media. If you like your media without fear mongering or causing you to feel depressed and demotivated. Even the left media can make everyone demotivated. I'm just thrilled that many people came out and voted, for the benefit of humanity. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. I'm Julianna Forlano. You can follow me personally on Twitter and follow Act TV across platforms. Thanks for watching.